Good morning. Good morning. Hello, everyone. I assume good morning to the most of us, but if not, hello to all of you. Nice to see you all checking in. It's kind of rush the mornings, when you start here, you say you're going to see people. Like if we could see you, all the names that come in and scrolling in, it's quite interesting. It's like uh, expecting a new gathering every day. So, welcome to you all. Another week, another Dharma week. And yes, thank you for being here. And I have my very nervous cat just juggling around because of the sparrows. So, just okay. I hope you can all hear me nice and sound. We are welcoming James Rafael this week. It's the first time he's teaching with us. So, for every newcomer, warm welcome to you. Warm welcome to you, James, and warm welcome to all of you coming for the first time. James is a mindfulness and movement teacher. He's living and teaching in the joyful chaos of central London. He began formal practice in 2011 under the teachings of S.N. Goenka during a time of substance addiction and burnout while living in Soho. He is a yoga, somatics, and qigong teacher, having been trained and authorized to teach mindfulness through Martin Awood and Mark Coleman. He has been sober since 2015. He read English at Cambridge University and emphasizes the importance of inclusive language, mindful communication, the power of poetry, and creating queer inclusive progressive spaces to learn and practice in. He leads retreats, teacher trainings, and workshops internationally and online via his online platform. Key influences in his teachings have been S.N. Goenka, Charlotte Jokobak, Martin Aylward, and Mark Coleman. So again, welcome, James, and thank you for being here with us at Sangha Live. James will be addressing the theme of fluidity and flux, gateways to a kinder, more inclusive world. So, just to set the things, that we'll be here for about an hour. James will give a talk, guide us through a practice, and then there will be space for questions and answers. For your questions, you can write your questions in the chat. This is a live stream. Please, if you ask your question, start by typing in capital letters question. But you can also come on screen with the little virtual hand on the bottom of the screen. You can click on it and that will bring you on screen. Last thing I want to mention is dana. Like every day, dana is the practice of our fluid generosity. The only way we can support Sangha Life is through your generosity. That's the only resources we have. So if you feel like donating, if your heart speaks that way, please feel free to do so. We'd love to stay here for many, many more years and do a lot of other things, increasing this Sangha, but we really need your support to do that. I've put the link on the chat and I will put it back at the end. So if you can't donate anything, please stay with us. Your practice, your presence is always a donation. So again, wishing you a very good week, very nice practice, and I'll leave you with the care of James. Thank you.
So, welcome everybody. Hi. Hello. Just want to acknowledge how precious I think it is to be in this space together, and thank you to George and the team for making this possible, providing the support And also thank you to all of you who are here, live, or if you're watching the recording later. It's never lost on me what a gift it is to be able to come together in community this way. What a time to be alive that we can do this, right? And so just all these beautiful messages that I see in the chat, warm wishes to each other, lots of comments on the weather, which is I think a good jumping off point for us in this topic of change and impermanence, which we're going to dive into a little bit today. But just welcoming you all, friends. Yeah, and thank you for having me in this space. I was just looking out of my window before, kind of reflecting on sort of changing morning light. I'm in Kensington in London right now, and this kind of dappled light coming through these gently rolling clouds. The air is still quite damp from the night. There's something in the transitory nature of the weather, I think, that can really teach us a lot, and I think also give us a lot of hope and optimism. So this week, really, what I want to offer is just an offering one orientation for practice, grounded in the teachings of Buddha, and really exploring the ways in which we can sense and experience the flow and the fluid nature of all things changing, like the weather, like the waves on the ocean. And all of our experience is in this same state of flow or flux. And some things seem like they don't change, but maybe that change is just happening really slowly, right? The lifespan of a tree, the life cycle of a mountain. A mountain is constantly changing, even if it seems fixed, even if it seems permanent. And with that change comes the possibility of transforming into something else. And really, my sense in my practice over the years has been, for me, the way in which connecting to the changing nature of all experience can really help us drop into a sense of care, kindness for self, kindness for other, and a sense of deep inclusivity and of adding this to, and the care that can come with that inclusion. And, sort of without talking too much about myself, but sometimes useful, I'm new in this space, just to know a little bit about my history. So I came to the practice, I first moved to London, I just graduated, and I'd been on a slippery slope with alcohol and quite intense substances, drugs. And I was in a period of corporate life where there was a lot of burnout for me, a lot of physical and emotional distress, panic, anxiety, and a long history of obsessive compulsive disorder and different things I was working with. So I kind of came to the practice in this moment of desperation and the kind of wreckage of my life. And if any of you have been to a beautiful retreat centre in England in the countryside called Dhamma-deepa, Dhamma-deepa is offered under the lineage and the teachings of S.N. Goenka-ji. Some of you may know this teacher. And so I started going on my first silent retreats because I was desperate. In addiction recovery, we talk about the gift of desperation, which never feels like a gift at the time, right? But in retrospect, maybe. In those first retreats in the early years, we'd wake up very early in the cold dark of the morning light at 4:30 or so. I remember walking through kind of gravel path to this beautiful, great meditation hall, very low lighting, cocooned in the sacredness of the morning. And we'd sit, I'd sit. And the body felt very solid. There was a lot of pain physically, a lot of discomfort mentally and emotionally. And my sense is it would never change. My sense is these were fixed things, fixed beliefs and identities, fixed experiences in my life. And Goenka has this incredible voice. It's very, his voice is very deep, very gravelly. Some of you will know what I mean. It's very deep, gravelly voice. And on those early retreats, one word would be repeated that would ring out across the cool dark of the morning light and the silence and the stillness. Just this one word, the Pali word, anicca. Anicca, anicca, anicca. And that word, often translated as impermanence, right? Impermanence. And this word really became my practice for maybe first 7 or 8 years of my practice. And this realization that even fixed identities, ways I viewed myself, the beliefs, self-limiting beliefs that I had about myself, addiction, things I thought I wasn't able to change, were always changing. They were in a state of flow and flux as well. And so this beautiful teaching from the Buddha of impermanence can be this gateway to feeling more included within ourselves, more inclusive of others, which automatically moves us towards compassion and towards kindness, the Brahma Viharas, the abodes of the heart. So I want to share, there's so many passages in the suttas around impermanence, but one which I think is very beautiful, I'm going to read. I'll read it twice. And just kind of allowing the words to meet you where you're at, just to gently come to you. You don't have to dive in to extract a meaning, just allowing them to wash over you like waves or clouds. And so this comes from the Anagutara Nikaya, 11:11. Read it twice. Impermanent are all compounded things. They arise and cease. That is their nature. They come into being and pass away. Release from them is bliss supreme. Impermanent are all compounded things. They arise and cease. That is their nature. They come into being and pass away. Release from them is bliss supreme. And so how might we connect to this bliss supreme through our practice? When we begin the practice shortly, I'm going to offer guidance for sensing the fluctuation of breath, of sensation, maybe sound, whatever's present in your awareness. But also that awareness itself is in flux, changing, flowing, oscillating, right? Even if you're very concentrated, if you have that strong samatha, strong concentration, eventually, sooner or later, we get distracted or awareness becomes diffuse. So even the awareness in the practice, the presence, is in a state of flow and change. And maybe if you're newer to the practice and these teachings, that can offer some support. If we get frustrated that I can't stay focused, everything feels stuck, challenging. Just knowing that ability to stay with things and to be present is also in flow. It's also changing. There's this, one of the well-known or beautiful stories from the time of the Buddha around impermanence is we're likened to a flame, a flame probably on like an oil candle or an oil wick flame that exists, sparks, and when the fuel runs out, it's gone. It burns itself out. And so all things begin, all things end. But what I'd offer, to me, nature is the most expressive of teachers. And the natural world really offers this ability to see the fluid, changing nature of things and that beautiful capacity nature has to unfold. Waves on the ocean, clouds rolling through the sky, the carving of mountains into valleys, into rivers, into canyons, into streams, into the sea. Everything is cycles, from the star being born in a distant galaxy to the star dying, to the individual cells within our bodies, subatomic particles in vibration, in flux. And so as we sit together today, friends, it's an invitation to sense where things feel in flow. Things are changing. I really like this word shimmering. Like my experience in my practice, the word that I sense is this kind of shimmering of all sensorial input, information, sound, sight, sensations in the body. It's all shimmering together. And again, if you're newer to the practice, impermanence can feel like a scary thing, right? We get fixed on endings. But actually, it's cycles, beginnings, endings, beginnings, endings. It's movement somewhere. Who knows where it's all going, right? But we're here for the ride, like it or not. So I'm going to ring the bell. And the bell, much like the sound of Om, I think really expressing and symbolizing that vibration, flux of experience. And so following the sound of the bell all the way to where you perceive it ending, and yet it likely continues a little bit beyond our ability to hear it, right? So let's sit together, friends. So just in the offering of inclusivity, you may be sitting, but there's 4 classical meditation postures, right? You could be sitting, you could be standing, you could be walking, depending on your home space, or perhaps lying down. If there's a condition you're working with, if there's pain, perhaps offering yourself the care of practicing lying down, if it's skillful. Wherever you are settling, is there a way you could be 5% more comfortable, more easeful? What might you adjust? And whatever your posture is, might there be a sense of really meeting the earth beneath, the earth beneath? And this soft embrace of gravity, which draws us inwards towards the heart of Mother Earth. Supported by the earth, steady. within that steadiness, an invitation to sense the length of your spine and the curvature of the spine, like a wave, like a fluctuation in flow. And you might invite a sense of brightness to the spine, a sense of brightness. And noticing what is present for you right now. What's really alive in the field of your awareness? And perhaps you're with the breath in a general sense, body breathing. And perhaps other physical sensations within your form, your being. If there are sounds pulling your attention, maybe inviting them, including them. And whatever is present right now for you, whatever feels alive, noticing if it's changing, shimmering. Maybe yes, maybe no. And within your awareness, perhaps inviting a sense of the beginnings of things, the beginning of each breath, the beginning of a sound, the beginning of a thought. What is arising in your moment to moment experience? And as new objects and phenomena appear and arise in your field of awareness, noticing the duration. Maybe the breath is shorter or longer. Maybe a sound continues for a while or is brief. Noticing the durations of different phenomena. And an invitation now to notice the endings, the passing away of things, the passing of each breath or each sound, and the passing of one physical sensation into another sensation. And sensing the endings, the passing of things. And right now, in your moment by moment awareness, what is present that is flowing, that is changing, arising, existing, and passing all together at once. Impermanence. anicca, 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 anicca. Continuing to sense the flowing, shimmering nature of experience, and that awareness itself may be more focused, more diffuse, in its own state of flow. And sit together in silence. Anicca. these last few moments, perhaps opening to the ocean-like nature of all things, waves of breath, waves of sensation, sound, thought, feeling, expansive like ocean currents in flow. And before I ring the bell, the words from the Anuttara Nikaya. Impermanent are all compounded things. They arise and cease. That is their nature. They come into being and pass away. Release from them is bliss supreme. So, Stephen, as we move into more engaged vocally or chat-wise, still that sense of present moment awareness on the flow, things being fluid. Some things may feel stuck for sure, but often around those experiences, those contractions, there is still flow. So, as with the format, I'm really glad and delighted to open up to really comments and observations, thoughts, questions, if there are questions. As always, feel free to write in the chat. We love the chat in Sangha Live. But also, if anybody would like to come on camera, would like to speak, there's the little hand icon at the bottom. And I'm sure George and I will bring you on. So I'm just looking, a few comments appearing. So thank you, Katharina. Thank you, Nicola. So lovely. Yes, Karen. Always a good way to start the day, right? When we can, when we have capacity, which you did today. Fabulous. Yes, Jasmine, that's great. It's wonderful that that's your experience, that it was deeply relaxing. So beautiful to have that experience in practice. As many of you know, it's not always like that, is it? Is it, Jasmine? Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Andriana. Pleasure. So you can see a question and reflection from Katka. I'm not sure if that's your name, but I'm going to refer to you like that. So they're saying, I've noticed that I sometimes can't stand that my mind is wandering away. Some reflections from you. This is sort of a very, very common experience. I think we all, in practice, whether we're new or have been practicing for a duration, experience this from time to time. Within this kind of topic and this theme around fluidity, one thing that's, I think, been useful to me and those that I've been teaching over the years is the offering that awareness itself is in flow, it's in flux. You sort of have this expectation sometimes when we come to the cushion that we can lock the focus, whether it's one pointed or more open, and that we can just stay without the mind wandering. And of course that can happen, right? But often that expectation creates an agitation, which I think is kind of what you're vocalizing a little. So my first offering is just this gentle reminder, this caring reminder to ourselves that, yes, I'll make right effort to be here, to stay aware, to stay present, but awareness itself is flowing. Sometimes it's more concentrated, sometimes it's more diffuse. There's sort of a lot of interesting research coming out at the moment that I'm reading around rather than being hyper-focused in one point, being what we might call scattered in focus, which is really very rich for creativity, for those of you in creative disciplines or in artistic pursuits, sort of actually allowing the mind to wander and be dispersed, at certain points in our life and on our day can be really rich, really useful. So, in your practice, if the mind is wandering, it's that reminder that that's the nature of the mind, right? It's the nature of the mind. And if you want something more specific to kind of really try and pull back the awareness and allow thought to settle, my first point with that would be to go to posture, actually, how you set up. Setting up in a way which is supportive to the quality of mind state that we aspire to. So posture which is steady, stable on the earth, but that has this quality of openness or brightness to it. If you're sitting, that might be the spine gently lifted, but also relaxed, alert, but relaxed. So that posture becomes this microcosm of quality of mind we might be hoping or aspiring to cultivate. So that's sort of offer some reflection for you, Katka, hopefully. Thank you, Connie and Laura. Yes, indeed, the supreme bliss of letting go, the supreme challenge, supreme challenge of letting go. But oh, what a magnificent thing when we can move to that space. So, question from Andreana. Is the theme of fluidity and flux connected with the theme of poetry? Perhaps with poetry, what you're referring to is my background is in writing and creative writing and a lifetime love of poetry, but also a lifetime love of Buddhist texts, suttas, which we're reading from. And for me, so many component parts of the practice and the teachings can be expressed through the way that we language. And there's many wonderfully gifted and talented people out there who write poetry or write verse or whatever it is, which can be such a beautiful route into feeling and sensing. Poetry has this great capacity, I believe, to connect us, to draw us deeper into what's meaningful, what's important, what's helpful. And so I certainly use a lot of poetry in my teaching. And the beautiful thing, I think, with poetry is that it's up for interpretation. The meaning that each person can take from a poem, or indeed from a text, from a sutta, right? The meaning itself is in a state of flow and flux because it depends on the person reading or listening and what we bring to that. So meaning is in flow, I think. Yeah. And Martin in the Sierra Nevada in Andalusia, beautiful, surrounded by the mountains, huh? Very permanent seeming, but always changing. Thank you, Kaka. So I'm just reading Patricia. Thank you, James. A memorable and connecting way to refresh our exploration of anicca. So glad Goenka was your way into meditation practice. Me too. I think on my first retreat, I perhaps wasn't so glad. It was quite challenging, right? Those of you who've practiced in that lineage. But yeah, just this, it was a really beautiful gift to come into contact with that teaching early for me, because it's been very, very helpful for working with and engaging with, challenging perspectives on identity that are fixed, self-limiting beliefs that we might have, habits that we might repeat that aren't so helpful. I think this teaching on anicca is really profound, and it's in the recognition of the letting go, right? Everything is ending, then it's a little bit easier to allow ourselves to let go from time to time, because sooner or later it's going to get taken away, right? So a comment from Lawrence: I have found it more difficult to see the endings without going through the whole process of appearing, being, and then ending. Right. Yeah, I resonate with this. The word that's often used or translated in many of the sutras is cessation, this kind of finality, cessation, ending. It's a clear ending. But it sometimes, for me, just finding a simple way of experiencing that. I've had many wonderful experiences working with sound, sound or nada in practice, and the endings of certain sounds I've found really can keep us kind of on the knife's edge of awareness, just that listening for the endings of sounds, really kind of keeping you at the front of your practice, the front of awareness, if that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you, Jeffrey. So glad you could be here. Yes, and with dear friends. Thank you, Andriana. Poetry offers a route into feeling and sensing. Meaning is in flow. Thank you, Catherine. It's lovely to have you here. So again, if there's more questions, we have a little time. Those of you who are very familiar with this topic of impermanence, of anicca, may be wondering if we're also going to look at the other, what I call three characteristics, or the three characteristics, or three marks of existence that we have from the teachings of Buddha. If you're less familiar with that, the three characteristics are as follows. It's usually given as the first one, usually, to my knowledge, impermanence, anicca. Then unsatisfactoriness, suffering, we might use dukkha. And the third, not self, kind of sense that there's not a solid self or solid identity, anatta. And because these three characteristics are interdependent and inseparable, we will be exploring these in the coming days. So a little bit more towards the delightful topic of unsatisfactoriness tomorrow, and how that itself, suffering, dissatisfaction, is in constant flux and flow, and how we might open gently to that to find greater self-compassion. Yeah, greater ability to include this too, right? So we're going to move throughout the week of using teachings from the suttas, but also really centering around the changing nature of experience as we can feel through these three characteristics, these three marks of existence. Andrew saying, as a classical guitarist, that's a great comment. The silence is as important as the sound in phrasing, allowing the music to breathe. Thanks. How beautiful. I'm in a quiet envy that you can play a guitar. It's challenging, right? Yeah, and this is also, some of you may know, with the sound of Om. You know, Om is comprised of 4 syllables as a vibration, as a fluctuation. First sound is the A, it's A-U-M. Second, U. Third, M. Fourth syllable, the inexpressible, the ineffable, is symbolized by silence. So the silence after the bell, and the silence after the sound of Om, or the silence that floods back in when we end chanting, is as important as anything else. So I can see George has given a list of useful ways to connect, ways to engage with each other through the Sangha. It's a beautiful space that we have. And also, in this new platform, there's no longer the Dana button, but there's ways you can offer Dana in George's comment. I'm just thanking the last few comments that are coming through. A real pleasure to be with you and have this time together. So whatever the rest of your time today has in store for you, it's the invitation or the hope that the sense of flow and fluidity can carry you on the waves of your life. Yeah. So I'll bow a little to close to all of you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Just seeing your comment, Heather, just before we close. I'd just recommend a good old Google, and if you search for Goenka, probably silent meditation retreats for Vipassana, near me, you might find a place that you can go and practice or engage with that teaching, which I would recommend doing in the context of silent retreat, for sure. I think very keen to encourage that, particularly in that lineage, in that tradition. I mean, I practice within a different tradition now, but yeah, there's many centers throughout the globe that offer the teachings of Goenka. So. Okay, thank you, everybody. And with kindness, I'm going to log out.